I was one of the few lucky people who listened to Broken Sword, Rotten Shield before it came out. I my review is coming out on Vox and Hops Friday. I don't
Cool.
know if you know that site. It's a website basically that's linked to a podcast led by the vocalist of Cryptopsy.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Exactly. So I love the record, but I couldn't shake the impression that it was the second chapter of a book you started writing with Coagulated Bliss,
Hmm.
and it felt I called it an expansion pack in my review. It felt more cohesive lyrically and emotionally. But you can hear where it's sprouted from. Like, what did you have in mind when you were recording it?
I mean, I guess the only thing you can really say is like, it sounds like something I would come up with because besides the very first track on the record, those songs were written for my other band, Reaper's Gong. Like
Okay.
that was a whole nother record for my other band. And we just so the story is I play in a noise rock band called Reaper's Gong,
Yeah, I know
and
Reaper's Gone.
Gabe, who plays second guitar in Full of Hell, was the bass player of Reaper's Gong. And we were about like we had, I think, like 7 or 8 songs written for a Reaper's Gong LP. And Gabe and the vocalist of Reaper's Gong were a couple, but they had broken up like uh I would say like a year into the band because the band started over COVID, but they broke up a year into the band and then just like it just personal issues,
Mhm.
and Gabe was like, hey, I really don't think I can like continue like being in a band with my ex kind of thing. And I was like, that really sucks because we had like studio time booked, and even the artwork for the record was for Reaper's Gong. Like
Like
I had
for this record?
for this record, I had commission for Reaper's Gong,
Okay.
and I had everything laid out and planned out. And I mean, like, this is going to be a whole long-winded thing. You might have like, I might answer a couple questions for you by doing this, but I think it's like all very important and ties in together. So, so yeah, the I took a few of the songs from that record where I'm like, I really, really like these songs and I don't want to throw them away kind of thing. Because like I said, we had time booked to like we had like I think like 7 or 8 days to go record with Andy from Weekend Nachos to record the Reaper's Gong LP. And Gabe had quit like maybe like a month before we were set to go to the studio. And I was like, I don't want to throw these songs away. I think I'm going to revamp Reaper's Gong, kind to change our vibe and the sound and everything, and take these songs and try to morph them to make them more Full of Hell sounding. Because Gabe's bass playing in Reaper's Gong was so important to the sound. With him leaving the band, it would have completely changed the vibes of the songs. And I was like, I think it's like a disservice to try to like make them something else kind of thing. So yeah, like like besides the first song on the record, and then the like we did two like the more like noisy interlude types things. The other 4 songs on the record were yeah, Reaper's Gong songs initially.
So is Reaper's Gone still a thing?
Yes, we actually have all new material written, and like we changed our sound. It's less less influenced by like post punk and like noisy hardcore stuff, and the newer stuff is more in the vein of like am rep noise rock type stuff, like taking influence from stuff like Swans and Oxbow and like Dazzling Killmen and stuff like that, like very mathy and very like epic, more
Okay.
like kind of like I said, mathy, but then like kind of like Swans feeling of like the epic orchestral type parts too.
Yeah, like soundtrack for the blind and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I was like for the Reaper's Gong stuff, yeah, I was like that and the Grand Annihilator and stuff like that.
That's kind of what that's one hell of a 180 you done. Did you have a new bassman or like because I heard like you like to play every role whenever you can.
Um so for the Reaper's Gong stuff you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
So actually Zoe, the vocalist, she started playing bass and we added
Oh,
a second guitar player.
oh, that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, because the last tape we did last year, she was singing and playing like some bass six underneath Gabe's bass lines. So once he quit, she was like, I'll just fully take over the bass duty for all this new stuff. And then we added our drummer. He has a twin brother who plays
Okay.
guitar, so we added him on second guitar.
I love that. It's gonna confuse people.
Yeah. I mean, they look enough alike, or they look different enough that people. I mean, it would be cool if they looked identical. They could just switch off. But
But tell me, am I crazy or like because last year I was talking to Sam about coagulated bliss for
Mhm.
the same website, and to me it sounded completely different from everything you like did before. But this sounds kind of like the offspring of coagulated bliss. Like the songs sounded like maybe not simpler, but like more anthemic, more cohesive. Like, was there a page that turned there?
I think, like I said, because these songs. I mean, when I was coming up with like the record for Reaper's Gong, I was taking influence from stuff like Birthday Party, Killing Joke. Um, I forget who else. It was like Killing Joke was like a big inspiration for that stuff. And
Or
like,
Broken Sword, Rod and Shield?
yes. And I mean, going back to the interviews and stuff I've talked about before with Coagulated Bliss, like Full of Hell's always kind of like dabbled in like some like noise rock stuff. Like you can even go back to like, our first 7 inch and stuff like that. There's like sludgy, noisy stuff, and we started adding the more noise rock influence on like the Merzbow collab and like
Yes.
with Coagulated, that was just like a big influence of like taking, the stuff I like from noise rock and then also like SST bands like Dinosaur Jr. and stuff like that.
The
So
Melvins?
yeah, I mean I saw Melvins on Monday with Napalm Death. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Um yeah, Melvin's all-time favorite band, and like Harvey Milk was a huge influence on Coagulated. But like I said, I think the only real like linear point from like Coagulated to the new record is just like me writing the songs kind of thing. Because
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I didn't, it's kind of a thing like I took a few of those songs, I took the songs I thought could be reworked into Full of Hell songs and reworked them because, like I said, they initially didn't sound like that kind of thing. So I took the songs that I'm like, we can kind of like twist them a little bit to make them work for Full of Hell. And like I said, the only song that was specifically written for Full of Hell was the first track on the EP, the title track.
The title track, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like the more classic sound, like the more like
Yeah.
competing ecstasy and that stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like I said, like throughout the years, like I mean, we've always taken influence from like stuff like Sonic Youth. And I think that was like that's a band, Sonic Youth and Melvins is like a bridge between what I try to do musically with, Full of Hell, Reaper's Gong, and even like I'm not in the band anymore, but I Flies as well.
I Flies, another inspiration from the Melvins, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's funny you mentioned Killing Joke because as much as I pride myself on my ears, like I could not hear it on this record, but I could hear it on Coagulated Bliss.
I
Like
mean,
like the start of transmuting chemical burns. That's Killing Joke, right?
well, to me, that's that song specifically. I was like looking at the Melvins as an influence from that, and like
Yeah.
kind of like taking an influence from them and a band that's also influenced from the Melvins,
Okay.
like Pig Destroyer or something,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. Okay.
So that's like that, but like um uh I'm terrible with it. Even though it's our song titles, I'm still terrible. But like Night's Oath, this the first song we released, like that song was definitely very initially when I wrote it for Reaper's Gong, like I said, like very in mind, uh like rudimentary pen eye, killing joke, that type of thing, like more moody post punky sound.
Okay. Well, that's the change worked. The tweak
Yeah.
worked. I've read in the promo literature, like from what I could understand, this whole album, the whole concept of this album is about the death of a pet.
So going back to what I was talking about initially as well,
Mm,
is so for when I had this art commissioned for Reaper's Gong,
yeah.
I found the artist. He goes by the Incredible Amoeba on Instagram, and like I don't think he's ever worked with a band before, but I found out about him because he drew a portrait of one of my dogs just randomly and tagged me in it, and I was like absolutely fell in love with it. And it's like the dog, his name's Ernest, and he's a striking, strange looking dog as it is. But his painting very much was like reminiscent of the Seer by
Okay.
Swans.
Yes.
So when I wanted to
Ah,
have the artwork done, I like messaged him. I was like, hey, like I'm trying to think of like trying to do a mix of like Swans, um I can't remember the name of the one with like the two rabbits on the cover. Something like that.
to be cruel, is that it? No.
No, no, it's I think Love of Life. That's
Oh,
it.
maybe. Anyway,
Like
but
something, yeah,
I understand.
like anamorphic animals. I wanted something like that. And then there's even an Angels of Light record where it's like a weird cartoonish drawing of like a dog with like on a playground, like as like
Mhm.
a human with like a lollipop. And I like took those records covers and I sent it to him being like, hey, I want to do something like this. And I mean, he came up with all the drawings and the concepts within like I think a week. He had already sent me all the artwork, but it took on a new meaning uh because like I wanted the influences from that Swans and Angels of Light record, but I was like, oh, make my wife and I's dog like the focal characters. But as we were on tour with
Better
Better
lovers.
Lovers,
Yeah.
yeah, I had to leave the day before Thanksgiving in the US to fly home because me and my wife had to
Mm,
put the one dog down Keyway. So it
okay.
like took a more personal the artwork took a more personal turn, whereas before it was kind of just like, a cool concept to me, but then it went personal and Dylan took, I guess, like I never really asked Dylan what his lyrics are about because I feel like I like don't mean to be like rude being like I don't care what his lyrics are about, but it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of like that it's like more esoteric and mysterious kind of thing. But I like from what I gather, he like just essentially took the pain of losing, losing a loved one, losing
Mhm.
like an animal, losing a family member type thing, and like was able to take like the fantasy element of the record cover and kind of do it like take the fantasy element and mix it with like the personal element kind of thing
Mhm.
about being like, someone dying and like, equating it to like losing someone in battle or something like that.
Yeah, I follow you on Instagram and I saw that like you had to put your dog down in November and I had to do the same a couple of years ago with my boxer. It was about in the same dates, like November 20, I think.
Yeah.
And so I could relate. But tell me, where did it connect with this whole medieval imagery thing?
Like I said, I didn't even like initially when I gave the artist like the idea, I was like, I had nothing. I wasn't like, make them look medieval, make them look like, battle or fantasy driven, because that's not really my thing.
Mhm.
Like, I've never played like the Dark Souls games. I've never been into like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. But I remember we got the artwork done before we had to put our dog down, and showing Dylan the artwork, being like, look at what I had done for Reaper's Gong. And he's like, that's some of the best artwork I've ever seen, because
It's insanely good.
Dylan loves medieval fantasy type stuff.
Okay.
That's his whole thing. Because I mean, he runs this like the t-shirt printing thing where he does
Yeah,
all
he's a
like the
legit
Lord's,
man.
yeah, he does all like the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, Dark Souls, the Elder Ring, Elder Scrolls, whatever. And I showed him the artwork, and he was like pretty jealous of the artwork initially, being like, but as soon as I was like, the Reaper's Gong thing fell apart, I was like, I can't lose this artwork. Like, it's too good to like throw away. And it's like on a personal level now. And he was like, it's perfect, because I mean, he can write the lyrics around it, because he's like has so much inspiration and experience, like reading stuff like that and doing stuff like that. So like, it was perfect. It was just like, this record mainly came together as like a fluke. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, yeah,
like
okay, okay.
one struggle from one band, and it was able to like blossom into like something great for Full of Hell. And it's like, I mean, it's also great too for Reaper's Gong, because we were able to like, not let the band implode, and take this strife and take it into inspiration, and write these new songs that we think are great, and change the sound, and not make it seem like, oh, we're just like following up where we left off. We were like, no, let's take it in stride, and like try to do something different now. So it's like, it's worked out for everyone in the long run.
It seems to be a pattern with Full of It. Like, I'm from my external point of view as a fan, like everything that gets thrown your way gets turned into a force, gets turned into something in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, we've been doing it for so long, and you gotta, and it's with life, and just being a DIY band for so
Mhm.
long and stuff too. It's like, you take adversities, and you're able to like use them, and like shift, and you know, take something that could be bad, instead of like letting it destroy you. Just take it in stride, and be like, all right, here's how we're going to shift. How, you got to like, I've always talked about it too, like even with the band, like you have to look at certain things as like a business. And it's like, if you're doing a business and something gets thrown your way, you got to shift to make it work. And I think you got to do that in art as well.
It is a business in the sense, a band, being in a band.
Yeah.
All
That's like
right.
the not fun part, but
Tell me, it's purely perception again, but to me, 2023, pardon me, felt like a seminal year for you guys. And you guys did collabs and splits, and it ended up with a big collab with Nothing, like that was the talk of the town for a while. What was that year like for the band? Like, how did that affect your music?
I mean, like the I think, because people are always talking about being like, oh, you guys are so like prolific and you do so much, but it's just like, I've always taken it. I forget what band I read an interview. I think it was like Self Defense Family or something like that. Just reading an interview, being like, the why, if you're a musician, why wouldn't you be constantly creating? And I've
Mhm.
always taken that to like heart, and like, you know, coming from like a power violence, noise, grindcore background, you look at like power violence bands like Spaz or Man is the Bastard, and they're constantly working on stuff, constantly releasing stuff. And we just wanted to do that as a modern approach, being like, we're a band, we're supposed to be writing music, recording, and stuff like that. So it's like 2023 just happened to be a year that like stuff all came together, because we had recorded the Primitive Man record like over COVID. And I think it was like We recorded that over COVID when like, some of the like stuff was more lenient where you're able to like leave your house and stuff like that. We weren't touring, but we were able to like actually meet up and go into the studio and kind of thing in like a safe environment where we weren't going to be around people. We were just going to be around each other in a studio for 10 days. And we did that. And that was also too, it's like, we had so much time off around garden as well, just that we could just like write and record and, stuff like that. But it was like, you know, tied up in contracts and stuff like that that we couldn't, necessarily release stuff after we had recorded it. So it just like all uh came together in 2023 and just happened that, we did Primitive Man collab, the split with Gasp,
Gasp, yeah.
which is like one of our biggest influences. So it was like truly an honor to get asked to do that split. And uh the Nothing record, but the Nothing record we had written for a Roadburn collaborative performance that we did in end of 2021 or 2022 or something like that. So we had that material, and it just like, neither band was really touring or playing shows at that point because of like, COVID was still around, but it was starting to yet again lighten up. So like before we got into the full swing of like touring and doing stuff, we're like, we should get in the studio and actually record these songs instead of just making it like a one-off performance type thing.
Okay. So from what I gathered from what you were still telling me, like you were a loaded gun, basically. Like
Yeah.
everything was ready when you just like ready to put it out, and like people reacted. Are you happy with the way people reacted to these?
I mean, the thing that's like, I love the Nothing record. I feel like the Primitive Man record kind of got pushed under the rug a little bit because of the Nothing record. And it just happened, like I said, that like both those records came out the same year. And it kind of sucks that one overshadowed the other one.
Mhm.
But I'm still like very proud of both of those records. And it's like they were both a completely different experience. Like the Primitive Man record, we wrote in a room together. Yet again, Andy from Weekend Nachos produced it, and he like was just sitting there with like a notepad as we were writing the songs, just so we wouldn't forget like times and like structures and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And we just were able to write and record an entire collaboration in I think like 8 days or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then yeah, the Nothing record was like me and Nikki from Nothing, we butted heads a little bit on that
Okay.
recording experience, but I've said it in other interviews going into Coagulated, it was definitely a learning experience. It's like we are both, high strung, high tempered guys, and we know what we want from our bands. So it was like kind of a learning experience to be able to being like, all right, I might not necessarily be right on this part, so I have to like learn how to like service a song and like, less is more type thing, and take songwriting into a factor of just being like, sometimes I'm not right, like I said, and sometimes less is more. But if it's going to service the song and service the record, like that's the way it needs to be, kind of thing. And that was like my, like, taking that experience, like definitely helped me in preparing to do Coagulated.
Um, Geeky question. Like a lot of people like request like are let down when you're not playing these songs from the collaborative record live. Like what's your you guys' take on this? Like do you ever want to play, let's say, like Rose Tinted World? Like it's one of my favorite collaborative songs you did.
I mean, we did the collab in Road, the initial collab at Roadburn, which was like its own special thing. But I think, yeah, it was like last summer we did a performance of it all the way through, because initially with the Roadburn collab, it was only 4 of the tracks, and we wrote 2 of the tracks in the studio. So when we did Sound and Fury, we actually performed the record all the way through with even the tracks that we recorded in the studio. And I mean, that was like a super fun, fulfilling experience, because it was like completely something new and something different. And it's with something like that, trying to get two bands to coordinate to be able to make it work to like try to perform again is like very difficult. We've tried to like set it up to do these performances like on the East Coast somewhere, or even like, I mean, it'd be great to do it up in Canada. I would love to do it in Montreal or Quebec City or Toronto
I'd
somewhere.
love it.
I mean, I would love it too, but it's hard to like, you know,
But
our bands.
what I meant was like, would you plan on playing it just on your own? Like, have one of these songs in the Full
No,
of Hell set? Okay.
it's like it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
like it would completely lose the significance of it. You know what I mean? And it's like
Hmm.
I think making it a special occasion thing with both bands makes it like, more of an experience for people and makes it more special for people.
Hmm.
And even though we would love to play these songs, it wouldn't be the same as playing it as the full collaboration in front of someone, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Like, what was crazy about the Nothing records that people who I never had musical discussions with, they knew I love Full of Hell. They knew I have their T-shirts and all, and they were coming to me like, "What is this band? What?" Like it accelerated the hardcore Full of Hell crowd, and that it made it part of a greater discussion. Like that's I think what was the main achievement from this record. Is this something you felt too?
Yeah, and I mean, it's also too, it's like I've always talked about it as like a band as well. Like we're inspired by so much different music that it's like sometimes hard to wear our influences on our sleeve kind of thing.
Hmm.
And sometimes it doesn't make sense for us to wear our influences on our sleeve. Like, you know,
Yes.
I love like stuff like My Bloody Valentine and Jesus and the Mary Chain and stuff like that. And that might not necessarily work with standard Full of Hell songs. But when we're able to do a collaboration, we can take that influence and be like, hey, this is a completely new like with these collaborations, like we want to be true as our to ourselves as a band, but we also look at it as too being like we can essentially just make this its own thing. Like, why do we have to box ourselves in and put rules on ourselves? Why can't we do a shoegaze record? It's the same thing. Like after that record, we did the record with Andy Nolan, which is like more industrial and like dub and techno and stuff like that. It's like, why would we box ourselves in? Like, you know, that's
Yeah. Fun fact: I became friends with Andy because I reviewed on the Dead End Follies, the site I'm going to put that on for,
Mhm.
and he just messaged me out of the blues, like, "Hey, I see you're a reader," like, and we hung out together in Montreal. He came to a noise show. Very cool dude. But
Yeah.
it seems to me like you've broken out of this. Like, does it make sense to us or not? Like, you guys are shooting on every fucking possible direction. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, because also too, it's like we look at a band like Melvins or Boris or something. Like, why can't we do that ourselves? Like, yes, people might associate us with the hardcore scene or like grindcore scene, but like, who why would we let some like elitist or something be like, no, you have to stick to that? It's like, no, it's our
Mhm.
band. Who cares?
Yeah.
As long as it fits us and like we're happy with the result. It's like I've always like taken to heart like a thing that like King Buzzo said. It's like in the Melvins documentary, he was just like, there's always going to be people that might not necessarily like what you do, but there's going to be a percentage that do like what you do.
Yeah. I saw the documentary like 2 months ago or something for the first time.
Hmm.
Like, cool guy, King Buzzo is very, very inspiring. So,
Yeah.
but even back in the days when you were more like marshy, more of a straight up power violence, like you never sounded like anyone else I know. Like maybe like music. Sometimes you feel like you're seeing the whole picture and you're only looking at the wall. But like, where did you have adversity? Did you face like incomprehension from people sometimes when you show up at shows and?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we still do. Like
Okay.
any band who grows or gets like any type of like, success or like in the like quote unquote spotlight is going to have detractors and haters
Mhm.
and people that talk shit and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, especially too with the scenes that we like associated with like first coming up, like of course people are going to like talk shit on us and stuff like that, but it's also too, we like, one, we never cared really, and two, like, even starting out as a band, we just kind of just played whatever shows we could. So even if people absolutely hated us in like the grindcore scene, we were just like, okay, whatever, we'll go play with like, we always used to play with like screamo bands. We'd always play with bands like The World Is a Beautiful Place, and we played shows with like Tiger's Jaw and stuff like that. And then
Cloakroom.
the yeah, like, and then you know the next day we would go play a show with like a band like Jucifer, and then a couple days later we'd go play. I remember the very first Full of Hell tour, like the first three shows. It was like the first show we opened for Brace War, the second show we opened for Jucifer, and then the like 2 or 3 days later we played with like For the Fallen Dreams and just like a metalcore showcase. So it was like,
Okay.
even as we started as a band, we are like, as long as we're playing in front of people, who cares like either what people think of us, or two, who cares like, you know, why do we have to box ourselves in and only play to like what we think we would appeal to people as.
It seems to me like it's a philosophy you've taken at heart whenever you go on tour now. Is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, because I mean, I've like always, if you play to the same people, it's going to stagnate. So,
Mhm.
even early on, it's like, not necessarily early on, but like we did the show with the Cavalier Conspiracy, and it's like,
Oh,
yes, now they're doing, more of the like death metal type stuff, but when we toured with them, they were just doing roots all the way through. So it was like a bunch of like new metal guys coming out, and like, people might have not necessarily liked us, but we were still getting in front of new people. And it's like, we would always like look at old bands that we like tours, like looking at like a Sepultura or something, and they would always take out like, you know they do one tour that was like, more death metal thrash based, but then they do a tour that'd be like Napalm Death and Sheer Terror. And you look at a band too, like even like a band like Sonic Youth or something, where they would take out like crazy just noise bands like Wolf Eyes and Hair Police and stuff like that. So it was just like, we always, with building tours and getting on packages, we're like, yeah, why would we want to play in front of the same people? If you keep playing in front of the same people, your band's not going to grow. So why wouldn't you want to play to new people? And, they might not necessarily like you, but you're still playing to, maybe there's like 10 to 15 people in the audience are like, oh, this is cool. And then you make a fan for life. And if
yeah,
you don't take that chance, like, you're just going to keep playing to the same people over and over and over again, and it's like,
yeah,
it's stagnating, and it's like not for fun for the audience, and it's not fun for you as a musician.
yeah. But it seems to be working in your favor. At least in Montreal. Like one of the last time I saw you, you were with Dying Fetus,
Yeah,
and people were not sure at the beginning. They were looking at Dylan. Oh, he has shaved hair. What the hell is this? Blah blah blah. And they were
yeah,
chanting your name at the end.
yeah. And it's like, we did the Dying Fetus tour, and then we did the Better Lovers tour, and it's like
Yeah.
completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And then after Better Lovers, we go on tour with Crowbar and Napalm Death, and that's like another thing. It's like Napalm Death is taking a band like Crowbar out on tour,
Yeah.
completely opposite ends of the spectrum musically, but
I,
it
I
still meets somewhere in the middle.
I was going to your show, I think in 2023, and I had no idea about End for some reason.
Hmm.
And I mean, I got smacked in the face when they came on the stage. I was like, "What?" Oh, sorry about that. But I've never. Now I'm a fan of End, and I'm a fan of Counterparts, and I got you guys to thank for it.
Yeah, hell yeah, thank you.
And I'm got a couple more questions. I'm pretty fascinated with the way you guys are like racing to the next thing. Like you never, I call you guys a shape shifting beast when I talk about my reviews. Like, but for the most part, the crowd is following you along. Like they understand what you are. Like I understand what you are, but sometimes they hang on to stuff from the past. Like for
Mhm.
example, the iconography from Trumpeting Ecstasy.
Yeah.
Everyone has that shirt. Like I even have that shirt. Like how do you feel about them hanging on to these things in particular? Do you feel like forced to play the songs live?
No, I mean, I think it's a situation where it's like that record happened to just like pop off for certain people at a certain time, but it's also too, it's like around that same time period we released the first Body collaboration, which that people look at that record the same light in Trumpeting Ecstasy, but they might not, you know what I mean? Like they might absolutely love the Body collab and not love Trumpeting Ecstasy, but they still, both teams hold those records up on their own as like merit of being like, this, no, this is the best one, this is the best one. I mean, there's even some people that are like, no, I only like Roots of Earth kind of thing. And it's like, I think, I mean, if you look at any band, like all bands, look at Jane Dell, look at Converge and Jane Dell. And it's, yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you harp or dwell on the fact about being like, oh, people only like that record, it's like, what is you might as well just be like one of the classic rock bands that just plays county fairs or something.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, you can't, it's awesome that there is groups of people that absolutely love one of our records and they might not like other records, but it's like we still impacted someone's life, you know what I mean? So it's like if they wanted to just stop at that one, that's all fine, well and good. And it's like, some of the songs, it is like a situation where it's like, I'm sure Metallica gets sick of playing Inner Sandman, but still, like that's the song people want to hear. So
Yeah, songs like Deluminate, Crawling Back to God, they have always been part of your set for as far as I
yeah,
was concerned. Like, you guys
yeah,
still have fun playing these?
yeah. I mean, I think Crawling Back to God is like one of the most fun songs I've ever come up with. So it is
It's
like
one of my
fun to play.
favorites. It's one of
Thank
my
you.
favorites.
Thank you. But
This one is Transmuting Chemical Burns. I love.
yeah,
Uh,
and
Door
I
Instrumental Agony.
yeah, I think it's, it just happens. There's some songs on some records. It's like, yeah, we actually had band practice today and we were like, oh, after we do this Harm's Way tour, because we already have the set figured out, we're like,
Okay.
we should bring back Vessel Deserted. We haven't played that in like
It's true.
2 years, you know what I
It's
mean? It's
true.
like even some tours were like, you know what song we should play? We should play Endless Drone, you
Yeah.
know? So
um, okay, another nerdy question. Was there, like, when you guys started Full of It was you and Dylan, right?
actually Dylan came in 6 months into the band.
Okay.
The original Dave was on the very first tour ever, but he wasn't on the first demo. The
Okay.
drummer from the first demo was in this. He's from our area, but he's now in that band, Oh Sleeper.
Okay. I
It's
don't
like
know that band.
it's like a Christian metalcore band. But he was just like, it was like some guy we knew from around here. His name's Zach, and we were like, hey, can you come with us and record drums? We don't have a full-time drummer, but like I said, I found Dave. I've said on MySpace, or said in interviews millions of times, that I found Dave on MySpace. I was like, hey, do you want to go on tour? And he's like, I'm only 15. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So so it's been me and Dave since like the very first tour, and then Dylan joined like 6 months in.
Because so you were 15 when you started?
I was 19, Dave was
Okay.
15. Yeah.
Man, Dave, how old is Dave today? He looks
Dave
young.
is, I think he's 30. He's either 30 or 31 now.
Wow, he's a
Yeah,
machine,
because
that guy. He's such a weird drummer. He's such an
yeah,
off-putting drummer. I love to hear him.
well, that's like when I first talked to Dave, he was like a 15-year-old. So I was just like, I was like, hey, here's all these records and all these bands you have to listen to. Like he had never played a blast beat before. And I'm like, listen to like this grindcore record or this power violence record, this sludge record, this whatever. And I was like, just gave him, I remember like texting him at work, like legitimately hundreds of bands to check out, being like, this is your homework.
But once again, it's a perceptual thing. But did you have a concept of what you wanted in your mind? Like, did you see what Full of Hell was going to become? Because I'm seeing a concept in the music, and I'm not sure if I'm seeing the right one.
So when it started, our first bass player was very much of like more of the hardcore mindset.
Hmm.
And it was like when we first started the band, it's like obviously we get the band name from Entombed. So it wasn't like necessarily death metal, but it was like the more like Entombed, I Hate God, but mix it with like stuff like Cursed and Trap Them and stuff, bands of those times, like because we started in 2009. And as Dylan joined, I was more showing him like, we were really inspired, starting to get inspired by bands like Insect Warfare, Man is the Bastard, Endless Blockade, Gasp, stuff along those lines. And our bass player, like absolutely of that time period, absolutely hated anything noise and stuff. And he eventually, like, he kind of like, we felt like he was holding me and Dylan's concepts back about being like,
Okay.
we should have Dylan start doing noise, and we should start, being more grind and like stuff like that. And once he finally quit, me and Dylan were like, let's just go for it. Let's just add all these influences we want, kind of thing. So
So that's when Full of Hell became Full of Hell, from what I
yeah,
can gather.
so still like I would say around like he was our first bass player. He was in the band for I think a year, and then once he quit and like on our first like we booked like a 6 week tour, and on the last week he was like, I don't want to be in the band anymore.
Damn.
So yeah,
And
so we but once he quit, me and Dylan were kind of just like kind of relieved because we didn't get along with him. We didn't get along with him, and two, we were like, now conceptually we can like do what we want as a band. And I think as the years have gone on too, like I forget what you were saying, like an older question about like, musically and stylistically and stuff. We've just gotten better at our instruments as well, because when we started out, it was like very much coming from the vein of hardcore and punk, and like kind of teaching ourselves how to like play and incorporate more like metal and death metal type stuff into the stuff
okay.
songs.
There has to be some non-musical influences, though. Is there? Are there? Are you influenced by non-musical stuff?
For me personally, not really, but I know
Okay.
for a fact for Dylan, and yet again, I can't tell you what he's like going on in his head kind
Hmm.
of thing, but I know it is probably some, Lord of the Rings type inspiration or shit, something like that.
He made a post for I think you guys have a David Lynch inspired shirt,
Yeah, yeah,
and like he made a post. I think it was him that made a post when he died, when David Lynch
yeah,
died.
yeah.
So like that seems to me like, because it feels like it's not just music. Like there's so many art forms that you guys make coalesce into a musical form that I think that makes you special. That makes you guys who you are.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, like maybe lyrically like lyrically, Dylan definitely gets influence from like movies and books and stuff like that. And I would even say artistically, like conceptually and so aesthetically, I definitely take influence from like weirder like punk artists I see online, and because I'm always going through Instagram and like trying to find like new cool artists, or even going back and looking at like old Japanese hardcore, and just like the art and the aesthetic of it is very inspiring to me. And even, I can say for Sam as well, like it might not musically like, he might not musically be inspired by other stuff he likes outside of movies, but I mean, him and his friends did the music video for Knight's Oath. That's like Sam our bass player did that. You know,
Mm.
it's
He
like,
he played in Fractured Bonds to Mecca too, no?
yeah,
Did
him
he?
and his friends directed that as well.
Okay.
So it's
That was,
so it's
that was a that's a good song too.
oh, thank you. But yeah, you know, so he's obviously thinks outside of the box and like definitely takes a lot of inspiration because I know his like growing up, his dad was very much into showing him weird, obscure like cult horror movies and
Nice.
exploitation movies and stuff like that. So,
Nice. It's a question I ask a lot of people because I do music, books, and movies
mhm.
on my site. So that sort of stuff interests me. Last question. Where do you want to take this next? Do you have any idea where it's going? Like, do you like shift from moment to moment?
So all these people were like giving like tongue in cheek giving us shit because in the audio tree live session thing we did, I say in the interview, I'm like, yeah, we don't have anything coming up. And we didn't have anything coming up. And then, you know, Reaper's Gong fell apart and I had all these songs. So like truly now after doing this record, I don't have anything right now. Like I can
Okay.
truly honestly say I do not have anything right now. I have tons of like riffs and stuff in my phone because I'm always coming up with riffs and ideas. But as far as Full of Hell, like I don't have anything concrete and it's like kind of need to like take a little mental break from writing and coming up with stuff.
Yeah, and the shows too. Like you guys are working hard. Like I saw you
Yeah.
guys 3 times last year.
Yeah. And it's like yeah, we're coming. We're have the tour with Harm's Way coming up next week,
Mhm.
and we have some stuff. I mean, we have stuff already lined up for tours for halfway
Okay.
through next year.
Oh,
But
damn.
but as far as like music and stuff, like yeah, we just need to take a little break. So then that way too, it's like you know I can focus on maybe well, I know after the Harm's Way tour we're recording a new Reaper's Gong EP. I already have the studio time booked for all those new songs, but it's like maybe Dylan and I were going to focus a little more on doing like some more Sore Dream records and then like, I'm sure Jarhead's on the Harm's Way tour, but I'm sure that they want to work on new material as well. So it's kind of nice to being like a little bit of like mental free time to do what we want and not have to think about coming up with Full Hell stuff.
Are Sam and Dave are gonna play 2 sets every night on that tour?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's
I
good.
mean, they did I was last year they did a UK tour. It was like Full of Hell, Antichrist Siege Machine, and Jarhead opening. So this is not something new.
Yeah, and even for Dave's the guy who doing the big fucking physical stuff.
Yeah. I think he said before because we've done a couple shows, like we did a showcase when St. Vitus in New York was around where we did a warm-up shows for the Roadburn residency where we had to like play a bunch of records all the way through. So we did 2 nights at St. Vitus where we did like one night we did a bunch of songs off of like Roots of Earth and trumpeting, and then the next night we did like songs off of Weeping and Garden, but Jarhead opened one of those shows as well. So it's just like so Dave's used to putting in the work. I mean, yeah, Sam's in Jarhead as well, but Dave's doing vocals and drums.
Yeah, and there's your old bassman also is in Jarhead, right? Brendan.
Yes, yeah, he plays
Okay.
guitar.
All right. That was amazing, Spencer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'll just stop the recording now. But I'll